In 1431, beneath a sky choked with Normandy smoke, flames cradled the peasant's daughter who had made kings kneel. Joan of Arc, not maiden but mirror of divine wrath, stood bound as Rouang's pyre whispered promises of eternity. Torchlight danced on her armor's ghost, now stripped, revealing skin that had known steel and saints alike. Mercy, that frail virtue, watched from clerical robes, while cruelty donned the mask of judgment. In her eyes burned the eternal truth: power devours its prophets, and faith is the sharpest faggot. Rouang's air thickened with incense and dread, the same carrying echoes of her voices, those celestial commands that had rooted English legions at Orleans. Yet here, in the church's shadow, salvation twisted into sacrament. The execution was no mere death. It was theatre, scripted by bishops who feared her more than hellfire. They called it heresy. She called it obedience. Rouang believed it had purified France. It had only kindled a ghost. If you value the historical record, subscribe to Whispers of History. When the ashes settle, the saints still speak. Joan emerged not from cradle silk, but from Domremy smud, where the muse whispered secrets to a child who listened. Born into a world where England's longbow claimed French thrones, her village bowed to both plough and peril. Yet from her first breath, she embodied the fracture, a girl who saw angels amid Burgundian raids. Not innocence, but invasion shaped her raiders, torching fields, priests chanting futile litanies. By 13, voices pierced her silence, not as madness, but as mandate. Daughter of God, they declared, arming her with banners, not blades. France, bleeding under Henry VI's claim, needed no warrior. It needed a symbol, and symbols bleed first. Her rise pierced the veil of feudal chain. Not through birthright, but through audacity, she demanded audience with Charles VII at Chinon. Clad in white armor, hair cropped like a boy's, she spoke not of strategy, but of divine right. The Dauphin, shadowed by doubters, tested her with his crown hidden among courtiers. She found it unerringly. Crowds surged, calling her Purcell. The maid Orleans fell not to siege engines, but to her standard, emblazoned with lilies and the archangel's name. English archers fled, their arrows turning to omens. Joan did not conquer, she compelled. Kings knelt, soldiers wept. Yet power, that jealous god, already sharpened its stake. Law in 15th century France was no parchment shield, but a bishop's crozier. The ecclesiastical court at Rouen, convened by English gold, transformed heresy into procedure. Pierre Couchon, that velvet-voiced inquisitor, presided over 70 articles, each a noose disguised as question. Do voices bid you wear male garb? They probed, as if linen proved damnation. Joan affirmed, God commanded it for war. The judges nodded, transcribing salvation as sin. Law here was alchemy turning prophecy into peril. Witnesses, coerced or covetous, testified to visions they never saw. The trial was not justice, it was jurisprudence as conquest. England needed her broken, not merely slain, to legitimize their Lancastrian claim. Every deposition dripped with the truth. Legal robes concealed the dagger, yet beneath the notary's quill lay deeper perversion. Marriage, that sacrament of flesh and fealty, became weapon. Joan, vowed to spouse divine, rejected earthly bonds. Inquisitors twisted this into sorcery. Did saints forbid her wedding? Her answer scorched, I wed Christ alone. The court recoiled, for in her purity lay threat to noble alliances, forged in bedchambers and dowries. Law probed her virginity not for virtue, but violation, probing if celestial husbands supplanted human heirs. France's survival hinged on heirs, Joan's on heaven. The dichotomy exposed empire's frailty. When a maid outshone monarchs, law bent to preserve the bed over the battlefield. Bureaucracy sustained the farce. Scribes copied indictments in triplicate, sealing them with wax that mocked sanctity. Days blurred into interrogations, each pause a calculated torment. Joan signed recantations under duress, only to revoke them, declaring the first coerced by fear. The apparatus ground on, appeals to Rome ignored, witnesses shuttled like chattel. Couchon's clerks audited every syllable, categorizing faith as felony. This was governance by grammar-aware heretic, justified invasion. Rouen chambers echoed with the truth. Bureaucracy immortalizes injustice. turning one girl's defiance into empire's ledger. Micro-twists emerged in stolen glances. A guard whispered doubt. A priest averted eyes. Tension coiled. Would law devour its own logic? Joan, chained in male attire, faced assessors who demanded feminine submission. "Cut my hair," she retorted. "God forbids." The court's rhythm faltered. Law, meant to bind, now strained against the unbound. Fear administered the trial's pulse. English captains loomed beyond doors, their presence unspoken ordinance. Couchins sweated under threats of dismissal, witnesses under excommunication. Joan sensed it. You act from fear, not faith. Fear was no emotion here, but edifice calendared hearings, guarded cells, whispers of the stake if verdicts delayed. It calibrated obedience. Bishops trembled before Burgundy's purse, as peasants once before raiders. France's fracture weaponized dread, dividing church from conscience. Spectacle loomed as governance. Public readings of her crimes drew crowds to Rouen Square, priming them for pyre as moral theatre. Law prepared the script. Fear prompted the lines. Yet Joan's gaze pierced the veil. "I die for truth you cannot face." Bureaucracy filed the transcripts. Fear silenced rebuttals. The system escalated, from private probe to public pillory. Economy underpinned the Inquisition. English coffers funded Couchins, court gold from taxed parishes, loaned at usury. Joan's trial was fiscal theatre. Burgundy's Duke Philip bankrolled scribes to legitimize theft of French domains. Each deposition diverted from war's true cost: grain shortages, peasant levies. Her voices promised abundance. England's law promised annexation. The ledger balanced on her silence. Religion crowned the corruption. The University of Paris, that theological machine, endorsed charges 70 doctors deeming angels suspect. Faith, once Joan's armor, became inquisitor's blade. Schism, they cried, though her creed echoed saints. The church, fractured by councils and popes at Avignon, saw in her unity threat. Sacraments twisted. Eucharist denied her. Confession weaponized. Rouen cathedral bells told not salvation, but subjugation. The machinery of faith ground finer still, its teeth not stone but sacrament. Joan's cell, damp with sane mist, hosted theologians who wielded scripture as shackles. "Your voices contradict canon," they intoned, citing Aquinas against angels unbidden. She countered, "They bear lilies and swords," naming Jesus as judge. Religion here was no bridge to heaven, but moat offended by doctors who feared her direct line to God eclipsed their mediation. The church, riven by great schism's ghosts, could not abide a peasant bypassing pope for prophecy. Her trial exposed the fracture. Faith as filtered, where saints filtered through clergy lest they append the hierarchy. Slavery shadowed the unseen laborers of Rouen's Inquisition. Not iron-bound Africans, but serfs and clerks, bound by tithe and tenure, who copied condemnations by candlelight. A scribe's quill, dipped in fear's ink, transcribed Joan's defiance as delirium, erasing her Latin fluency as illiteracy's proof. These wretches, village-born like her, hauled faggots for the pyre, their sweat sanctifying English gold. Unseen hands polished couchins, crozier, laundered robes stained by midnight doubts. Joan's gaze found them in shadows. God sees your chains too. Slavery was empire's spine, flexible for lords, rigid for the bent. Fear as administration calibrated every breath. Hearings paused for whispers from English lords. Couchin paled at dispatches demanding haste. "Burn her, or lose Normandy," they urged, turning dread into docket. Joan named it. "Fear rules your council, not Christ." The pulse quickened, guards tripled, cells inspected for relics that might enchant. Fear's bureaucracy filed omens. A storm at her entry to Rouen, crows circling the tower. Superstition became statute, each raven a rationale for relapse into heresy. Spectacle as governance swelled. On May 24th, amid market clamour, Joan mounted a scaffold in male garb, recantation revoked before thousands. "I wore it by force," she cried, but the crowd, primed by placards, bayed for relapse. Bishops orchestrated the theatre, her atop a pillory, cross in hand as mockery of Calvary. Cheers masked the script English, archers grinning, French peasants weeping in corners. Spectacle fused law and mob. Her abjuration parade became preview of pyre, teaching obedience through optics. Rouen watched its salvation burn in effigy first. The climax approached, not in blaze, but exhaustion. Joan's strength waned, favor from chains, voices silent under duress. The system strained, appeals smuggled to Pope Eugene IV vanished into Vatican vaults. Cauchin consulted Paris anew, 70 theologians ratifying relapse. Tension peaked in secret sessions. She invoked saints against us. Bureaucracy buckled, fabricating final bulls. Yet microfractures appeared. A notary wept mid-transcript. A guard slipped her wine. The apparatus hummed, but hummed hollow. Economy tightened the noose. Burgundian loans, repaid in French fiefs, demanded her corpse as collateral. Paris butchers hiked prices amid trial-fueled famine. Tithes diverted to inquisitors' larders. Joan's victories at Jargeau, Pate, had promised harvest. Now law promised annexation. Gold flowed from London. Henry VI's regents taxing wool to fund the farce. Her death would auction Orleans, legitimize theft, ledgers balanced on brimstone. Religion's pillar cracked under its own weight. The faculty deemed her relapsed visions demonic postrecantation. Sacraments withheld. No viaticum for the maid who had rallied armies under God's banner. Better angels than your doubts, she whispered. The church, claiming shepherd, devoured its lamb. Theologians twisted prophecy. Her coronation of Charles at Rheims now sorcery's fruit. Faith's machinery, oiled by fear, ground toward Auto da F. Fear's tendrils reached the pyre's edge. Executioner Nicholas Loiseleur, that false confessor, trembled as faggots stacked. English lords pressed, no escape by miracle. Cauchin bolted the tower door, fleeing to mass. The air thickened, crowds, herded by spears, whispers of sorcery if flames failed. Fear administered the finale. Sergeant's torch dipped in oil, calibrated for slow torment. Spectacle crowned the collapse. Old Market Square brimmed 10,000 souls, from silk-clad bishops to mud-caked fishwives. A preacher railed her sins from a cart. Joan, shaved and smocked, climbed scaffold steps. "We declare you heretic," intoned the sentence, cross-thrust before her eyes. She murmured Potter. Avathan flames leaped. Spectacle devoured its star. No warrior's pyre, but witches' theatre. English gold bought the show. French shame applauded. Yet the system exhausted itself in the blaze. Witnesses later swore. Flames parted, revealing a dove ascending. Executioners raked ashes for relics, bones, unburnt heart, hurling them to Seine. Cauchin's machine sputtered. Crowds dispersed, murmuring sanctity, not sin. The trial's logic, inverted mid-fire martyrdom, eclipsed heresy. Assassination came not by blade, but by bureaucracy's quiet unraveling. Joan's pyre, still smouldering in Rouen's memory, left no corpse to conquer, only echoes that haunted the English camp. Henry VI's regents, those ledger-keepers of Lancastrian dreams, dispatched her relics to the Seine's depths, believing water would drown divinity. Yet the system, that vast engine of law and fear, faltered in the ash stink. Cauchin retreated to his bishopric, quill trembling over vindication scrolls none dared read. Her death was symbolic, no triumphant parade, but clerks sealing transcripts in wax that cracked like conscience. Rouen thought it had buried the maid. It had only seeded ghosts. Aftermath uncoiled in philosophical shadow. Charles VII, that crowned phantom at Rheims, rehabilitated her not through decree, but rehabilitation trial of 1456, 25 years late, presided by priests who once whispered doubts. The court's preamble indicted the Inquisition itself. Corruption, fraud, calumny. Witnesses resurfaced, guards confessing coercion, scribes admitting forgery. Law, once her noose, now looped Burgundy and England as villains. Yet the verdict rang hollow, nullified heresy, affirmed sainthood's seed. France exhaled, but the fracture lingered. Church, apologizing to a ghost it had immolated. The system confessed its own heresy. Power's judgment over prophecy. Universal truths emerged from the cinders. Joan's voices, dismissed as delusion, proved sharper than Cauchin's crozier-rooting armies where theology faltered. Power corrupts not the wielder, but the wielded. Bishops who bent to gold, kings who pawned faith for fiefs. Her trial autopsy of 15th century Christendom, law as conquest's cloak, religion as regent's tool. England's longbow yielded to her banner. Bureaucracy yielded nothing but pyre. The maid exposed the eternal. Civilizations devour their saviors. mistaking divine fire for witchlight. Yet deeper pillars trembled in the echo. Marriage's ghost haunted the verdict. Joan's celestial vow, once probed as perversion, now sanctified. Noble houses, allied by bed and betrayal, saw their dowry dramas dwarfed by her purity. Inquisitors had weaponized intimacy. No husband but God. Now, posthumously, she wed France eternal, her banner over Valois heirs. The dichotomy scorched, earthly bonds fracture under war. Heavenly ones forge nations, Rouen clerks, auditing rehabilitation, inscribed the twist chastity outlasts crowns. Bureaucracy's collapse mirrored the blaze. The 1456 proceedings unearthed Rouen's ledgers, cautions, salary from English purses, witnesses bribed in wine and threats. Scribes who once copied condemnations now transcribed exoneration. Same quills, inverted ink. The apparatus, meant eternal, proved parchment fragile. Appeals long ignored resurfaced, Vatican bulls validating Joan. Tension reignited. Burgundian envoys squirmed as Philip the Good's gold was named extortion. The machine ground reverse, exhuming injustice as its own fuel. Economy unraveled in the rehabilitation's wake. English taxes, levied for Normandy's hold, crumbled as Joan's legend rallied levies. Paris merchants, once thriving on trial teeth, faced boycotts, her name invoked in market whispers. Charles VII's coffers swelled from reclaimed fiefs. England's drained into channel tides. Her pyre, budgeted as propaganda, birthed fiscal reversal. Saints profit more than heretics. Gold's flow inverted from London's mints to French mints, stamped with lilies, her standard revived. Religion's pillar quaked profoundest. Pope Calixtus III ratified the nullification, paving sainthood's path. Canonized 1920, yet seeded in 1456's contrition. Theologians who damned voices now passed them as grace. University of Paris recanted its 70 doctors. Schisms, scars, from Avignon to Basel, bled anew. Joan's direct divine line mocked mediated faith. Sacraments, withheld in Rouen, flowed posthumous Eucharist for the maid who fasted in chains. The church confronted its truth. When prophets bypass priests, pyres follow, but resurrection mocks the match. Fear's administration dissolved in daylight. English captains, once looming shadows, fled Pate's ghosts. Caution's heirs faced excommunication threats. Rehabilitation hearings drew crowds. Sands, Spearsphere's guards, replaced by faithful. Joan's cell tower crumbled, pilgrims tracing chains that bound her. Dread, once docketed, became devotion. Bishops trembled not at Lord's, but legacy. The system's pulse calibrated, terror flatlined into awe. Spectacle inverted to reverence. Where Rouen once pilloried, now processions bore her effigy, banner high, not scaffold low. Festivals marked May 30th, Pier Day turned feast. Crowds cheered, not relapse, but rally. England's spectacle failed. Henry VI's coronation at Paris mocked by her Reims triumph. Governance by optics boomeranged her flames, illuminated English retreat from Orleans to Calais. Slavery's unseen wept vindication. Serfs who stacked faggots saw kin ennobled. Scribes who forged now fair coped sanctity. The wretches, mud-born like Domremi's child, found in her mirror. Chains divine can shatter feudal. France's labourers, tithe-burdened, rallied under Pucel's echo-peasant revolts, whispering her name. Power's pillars, once Joan's pyre, now propped her legend, yet the fracture widened. Law's autopsy in 1456 revealed not justice's triumph, but its prostitution. Caution's court, funded by Philip the Good's avarice, had auctioned absolution. Rehabilitation judges, kin to inquisitors, unearthed bribes English crowns for Burgundian blades. Fraud from inception, they decreed, annulling Rouen's farce. Yet the twist, scorched, law self-correcting, proved no salve. It merely relocated the wound from her scaffold to history's ledger. France healed by exposing empire's legal lie. Parchment bends to purse. Marriage's shadow lengthened in vindication. Joan's unwed purity, once lewdly probed, celestial spouse or sorcerer's pact. Now mirrored Valois unions fractured by war. Charles VII, wed to Marie of Anjou amid English siege, saw heirs shadowed by her banner. Noble dowries, pledged for alliances with Burgundy, dissolved as her sanctity rallied loyalty sans bed. Inquisitors' intimations, virginity as vis raised, Her divine troth outshone earthly troths sundered by Lancastrian claim. The dichotomy eternal. Flesh alliances falter. Faith forges dynasties. Rehabilitation transcripts whispered the punch. When maids wed heaven, kings inherit ghosts. Bureaucracy, that tireless scribe, scripted its own defeat. Vatican archives, dust-choked, disgorged, ignored. Appeals Jones, 1431, pleas to Eugene IV, buried under schismatic squabbles. 1,456 clerks, same blood as Ruang's. Recopied exoneration in meticulous hand. Tension coiled in their hesitation. Quills paused over Cauchin's name. Inking perjurer. Philip's envoys, dispatched to sway, found doors barred apparatus, rigid against its makers. The machine, eternal in theory, betrayed its operators. Ledgers turned on lords. Economy of empire inverted through her ash. English wool tax, levied for Normandy's grip, hemorrhaged as French ports barred Lancastrian ships. Joan's name, tariff on trade. Charles VII reclaimed taxes from Orleans, minting deniers stamped with Rheims lilies. Burgundian merchants, once trial patrons, faced boycotts. Philip's coffers, drained, repaying heretic debts. Her pyre, budgeted conquest, yielded fiscal resurrection. Saints seed, sovereignty, heretics hollow treasuries. Gold's river reversed from Thames to Loire, gilded by her ghost. Religion's machinery groaned under rehabilitation's weight. Calixtus III's bull, 1456, not mere nullification but mea culpa church, admitting pyre as profanation. Theologians, Paris faculty, humbled, reclassified voices, not demonic, but doves. Schisms, basilica councils, mocking papal unity, found in Joan, rebuke, direct, divine scorned, mediated myth. Sacraments flowed retroactive viaticum for the starved, baptism for the bannerborn. Yet the fracture deepened. Priests who immolated now preached her, altars echoing recantation. Faith's truth, prophets purify the profane. Fear's administration crumbled to folklore. English regents, Bedford's heirs, abandoned Ruang Tower pilgrims, picnicking where guards once glowered. Cauchin's effigy burned in effigy. His see shunned by successors. 1456 hearings, spearless, drew devotees, chanting Purcelldred, dissolved to devotion. Burgundian dukes trembled at peasant murmurs. Her name sparked levies sans lash. Fear, once docketed daily, ghosted into grace. Spectacle as governance, boomeranged, brilliant. Where Ruang pilloried relapse, now May 30th, processions bore relics cross, once mocked, now kissed. Festivals supplanted scaffolds. Orleans feasts reenacting her siege. Crowds wielding lilies, not faggots. English triumphs, Henry VI's, Paris entry faded to farce beside Rheims pomp. Charles VII staged rehabilitations as theatre, actors as couch and shrieking verdicts, mobs cheering, inversion. Optics obeyed her. Pyre's preview became posterity's parade. Slavery's unseen rose in her reflection. Domremy serfs, kin to faggot haulers. Tilled Freer furrows Charles's pragery revolts, invoking maid. Scribes who forged now fair-coped bulls. Tower cleaners became shrine keepers. Feudal chains, tithe-tight, loosened under sanctity's solvent. Joan, mudborn, mirrored their mud. God lifts the lowest, shattering lords' ledgers. Yet the autopsy deepened. Joan's pillars pierced modernity's veil. Law, still bending to gold trials, televised as theatre. Marriage, intimacy, commodified. Vows, fractured by wars, widows, bureaucracy, endless forms, burying appeals. Economy, saints, marketed as brands. Religion, prophets, pastored into peril. Fear, administered via whisper networks. Spectacle, governance by gallery. Slavery, outsourced to shadows. Civilizations, ancient or alloyed, repeat the rite. Devour the divine spark, mistaking it for witchwood. Joan was not a maid, she was a mirror. Beneath the ashes of 1431 lingered the true Pirerong's old market square, where faggots hissed not mere wood, but the fracture of Christendom itself. Joan climbed not scaffold triumphant, but steps slick with maydew, shaved head bowed under Dominican cowl. The air reeked of pitch and piety, 10,000 eyes devouring the maid reduced to witch. No armor gleamed, only chains whispered against a smock. This was execution's prelude. Law's verdict read as sermon, transforming heretic into spectacle. Ruang believed it purged France. It ignited eternity. The flames themselves were philosophy incarnate, low-kindled by design, calibrated for torment over mercy. Executioner, Loisola, hands steady from English gold, layered faggots, low, alder for smoke, oak for endurance. Torch dipped, deliberate, igniting not blaze but suffocation first. Joan gasped, paternoster through billows, cross glimpsed amid torment thrust by a Dominican lest sorcery summoned storm. Her lips moved. Jesus, then silence as heat peeled flesh from bone. Cruelty here was craft, no instant sword, but sacrament of suffering, mirroring Calvary's theatre yet mocking it. If echoes of Rouen call you, they reveal systems eternal. Law had scripted the blaze. Now fire exposed its lie. Inquisitors watched from tower slits, Cauchin murmuring Te Deum as screams peaked. Yet witnesses fishwives, archered swore anomaly, flames parted like Red Sea, dove ascending heavenward. Executioners rate embers, frantic, unearthing relics, unburned heart, entrails proof against total consumption. Hurled to sane in panic, they seeded sane-side shrines. The pyre meant erasure, authored immortality. Origins of this terror traced not to Domremy's cradle, but 100 years. Wars, England's claimed devouring French soil since Crazy Henry V's Agincourt ghost crowned infant Henry VI dual monarch. Bedford's regency gripped Normandy per stite. Joan pierced this. Orleans lifted Isis Arjo, banner rooting longbows at Patay. Her voices shattered stalemate, Charles VII daubed king at Rheims. Yet systems recoiled. England's law deemed divine intervention, invasions, theft. Trial restored ledger. Heretics, pyre reclaimed Orleans fief. Rise through fractured pillars began in law's inversion. Rouen Court, 1431, February. 70 articles, woven from whispers male garb as idolatry, banner as idolatry's fruit. Cauchin, Winchester board bishop, fused canon with conquest. Relapse voids, recontation. Joan revoked abjuration, May 28th. God, bad armor, men forced skirts. Verdict. Relapsy. Law anthropomorphized as beast-devouring prophecy to feed regency. Marriage's probe delved deeper dread. Inquisitors circled virginity, spouse celestially admit sorcery. Joan wed to King of Heaven. Sacrament twisted purity, peril to Valois. Heirs shadowed by bastardy doubts. Noble beds, Burgundy allied for dowries, saw threat. Unwed maid rallying sans alliance. Intimacy weaponized, did saints forbid earthly troth. Her no-sundered feudal glue, exposing wars, widows, as empires cost. Bureaucracy oiled the inferno. Scribes, triple-copied bulls, appeals to Avignon, vanished in schism's mire. Daily torments calendared, chains fevering flesh, voices muted by isolation. Cauchins, clerks audited defiance latent, retorts logged, illiterate. Apparatus eternal, wax seals on death warrant, notary pausing only to sharpen quill mid-scream. Economy fueled the faggots. Burgundian Philip loaned Bedford for court, taxed Flemish looms. Paris tides diverted. Joan's siege lifts starved English supply. Pyre promised annexation. London mints struck testons for Loisela's torch. French peasants levied for faggot Hull. Her death balance books. Saints bankrupt. Heretics harvest. Religion's blade cut, keenness. Paris doctors damned voices post-recant. Demons reclaim relapsed soul. No viaticum Eucharist for warriors. Starvation for seer. Cathedral bells told Autoda, F, as liturgy. Dominicans sermonized sins from cart. Faith fractured. Her saints authentic till scaffold, then spawn. Schisms, poison Pisa councils, mocking unity made, direct divine suspect. Fear as administration kindled the pyre's base. English spears herded crowds. 10,000 souls compressed into obedience's amphitheater. Cauchin bolted tower doors, lest miracle mock verdict. Loisela's hand steadied by regent's glare. Joan named it mid-flame. Fear, not faith, lights this fire. Dread's docket, calibrated torment faggots, layered for agony's arc, smoked to choke prayer, blazed to blister bone. Rouen trembled. What if voices summoned gale? Fear filed the anomaly dove, unburned heart-ass, deviltry, not divinity. Spectacle as governance crowned the carnage. Preacher from cart thundered 70 sins. Joan, smocked and shorn, scaffold silent till cross-gleamed mercies lie. Flames leap scripted slow at ankles, leaping to banner-borne breast. Crowd bayed, then hushed, as form writhed iconic, arms cruciform, gaze heaven fixed. No warriors dirge, but witches theatre English lords grinning from balconies, French whispers seeding doubt. Optics obeyed empire, her death previewed France's submission, Orleans next on pyre. Climax exhausted, not flesh alone, but system's sinew. Flames parted per witnesses, Jean Massou, usher, swore dove heaven-bound. Executioners raked frantic for proof of sorcery. Heart gleamed crimson, unconsumed bones, hurled saneward in panic. Couchin fled to mass, scribes sealing transcripts amid ash stink. Tension peaked, inverted. Pyre meant conquest, birthed cult. Ruang exhaled conquest, inhaled haunting. Assassination by bureaucracy followed swift. No blade for made fire sufficed, yet failed erasure. Relics, smuggled sparked shrines. Charles VII's 1450 inquiry probed Ruang fraud. Couchin died 1442, unshriven, sea shunned. Philip the Good's gold-soured Burgundy, envoys dodging guilt's ghost. Trial transcripts, vaulted, surfaced 1456. Rehabilitation under Calixtus III. Judges kin to inquisitors indicting origin. Fraud, violence, terror, decreed nullification. Death's quill turned on architects or devouring law, aftermath uncoiled in philosophical cinder. 1456 court summoned ghosts. Loiseler confessed, false confessor. Scribes admitted coercion. Witnesses, resurfaced guards, weeping chains, fever, notaries, forgeries, ink. Verdict scorched, heresy void, Joan martyrseed. France knighted her kin. Reims echoed coronation sans bastard doubt. Yet fracture lingered, church apologizing to ash. Vatican bulls contrite. Systems confessed. Power immolates prophets, birthing stronger flame. Universal message, pierced veil. Joan's voices, couching crowned, demonic, rooted longbows where croziers faltered. Pillars autopsy. Law prostituted to purse. Marriage, purity, twisted vice. Bureaucracy, grinding grace to grit. Economy annexing saints. Religion mediating divine, direct. Slavery unseen, stacking faggots fate. Fear docketed, spectacle scaffolded. Civilizations devoured deliverers, mistaking God's spark for witchwood, yet pillars echoed deeper. Laws, self-nullification, 1456, mocked Ruang right. Parchment bends, then breaks under truth's weight. Inquisitors' heirs, judged progenitors, perjurers, justices, ironic pyre. Tension reignited. What scribes once damned, now deified. What sealed death, unsealed sanctity. Marriages, ghost-haunted vindication. Virginity probe, wed heaven, shun earth. Reversed celestial troth, sanctified valoir, fractured by widows. Charles VII, Anjou-bound, saw heirs, shadowed no more. Noble beds, Burgundy betrayed, dissolved in her purity's light. Intimacy's weapon dulled, unwed made outlasted allied flesh. Bureaucracy scripted defeat. Appeals, 1431, ignored. Resurfaced Eugene, the Fourth's, schism buried, pleas. 1456 quills, Ruang blooded, inked, exoneration. Couchin simoniac, Philip exploitationist. Apparatus betrayed, makers wax cracked on old seals, ledgers inverted. Economy reversed in Ashes audit. English taxes crumbled, Normandy lost, Orleans reclaimed. Charles minted Purcell deniers, Burgundian looms boycotted. Pyre's budget yielded resurrection, saints sovereign, heretics hollow. Religion's pillar quaked in rehabilitation's afterglow. Calixtus III's 1456 bull, not absolution, but apocalypse church, indicting its own flame. Paris doctors, once damning voices demonic, repassed as doves descent. Schism's basilica, ghosts Pisa, Constance mocked by her unmediated grace. Sacraments retroflew, viaticum for Ruang starved, baptism for banner baptized. Altars echoed recantation, reversed priests preaching Purcell, where Dominicans once thundered sin. Faith's fracture confessed. Prophets purify priesthood, or pyres pretend. Fear's administration ghosted to grace. Bedford's heirs fled Ruang tower pilgrims, tracing chain marks sans spear. Couchin's unshriven corpse shunned. Successors dodged his sea like plague pit. 1456, hearings, spearless devotees, chanting over dockets dread, dissolved. Burgundian dukes quaked at peasant psalms. Her name, levy, without lash. Fear, once calendared cruelty, fermented two fervor guards, who glowered, now genuflected. Spectacle governance, boomeranged to beatitude. Scaffold supped by shrine, May 30th, feasts lilies over faggots, processions her effigy, banner high. Orleans theatres reenacted siege, sans sorcery crowds wielding standards, not stones. English pageants, Henry VI's, Paris farce eclipsed by Rheims rite. Charles VII, scripted rehabilitations theatrical, couch enactors shrieking void verdicts, mobs inverting applause. Optics, immolated origin, pyres, optics, authored paradise. Slavery's unseen, sanctified in her shadow. Domremy, serfs, faggotkin, furrowed Freer Charles's pragery peasants, invoking maid over manor. Tower scrubbers, shrine keepers, scribes, forgery, forgiven, fair copying bulls. Feudal fetters, tithe loosened, her mud mirror lifting lowest. God girds the grimy against gilded. Wretches who witnessed whispers, one witness her glance, in gloom their gospel. Yet the autopsy circled deeper. Pillars pulsing prophetic laws. Self-immolation, 1456. Scorched Rouen rite. Justice judges its judges. Parchment pyre for perjurers. Marriage's probe. Purity's triumph. Celestial spouse, sanctifying sundered troths. War widows, wed to her widowhood. Bureaucracies, quillquake. Appeals avenged. Ledgers, lie labelled. Economy empires, echo, inverted, eternal. Lancastrian levies, lost to Loire. Mince Purcell, coin conquering Testins. Burgundian boycotts, bled Philip's purse. French fiefs, flowered from flame fraud. Saints sovereignize, heretics, hemorrhage gold, gospel. Grace gathers, grist. Religion recurs, radiant ruin. Theologians twist till truth tortures. Temple Jones voices, vex, Vatican veil, direct divine devouring doctrine. Schisms, sacrament, shames. When maids mediate God over miters. Miters immolate. Fear ferments from fangs to faith dreads. Docket devotions, diary. Guards genuflect where glowered. Lords lurk, legacy. Spectacle scaffolds to sanctuaries crowds. Cheer not cruelty, but crux. Slavery shatters, in seers sight unseen uprising under unburnt heart. Civilizations crave the cross they kindle, mistaking maid for monster. The mirror multiplies. Joan's Rouen recurs in every regime's reckoning. Law litigates its lies. Marriage mocks its matches. Bureaucracy buries its blunders. Economy enshrines its errors. Religion recoils from revelation. Fear flips to following. Spectacle sanctifies suffering. Slavery seeds sovereignty. Pillars, proud in prose, prove pyre-prone. Beneath Normandy's nave, systems whisper their secret. Power emulates its illuminators, birthing brighter blaze. France fractured, then forged in her fire velour, vindicated, England exiled. Yet the fracture festers. What empire endures its own echo? Rouen's pyre smouldered not in ash alone, but in the psyche of Christendom fractured. Joan's unburnt heart, sign-hurled, haunted English regents Bedford, commissioning inquiries to exercise her echo. Law's late logic stirred. Charles VII's 1450 probe unearthed Cauchon's corruption. Prelude to 1456's grand reversal. Judges, Dominican and secular, summoned shades. Loiseleur, the false friend confessor, trembling under cross-examination. Coerced by fear, he wept, as scribes, who forged now fair-copied fraud. The verdict thundered, trial void, tainted by terror and treasure. Law devoured its daughter, proving parchment pyre for its progenitors. Marriage's mockery deepened in the dust. Inquisitors lewd litany, virgin to visions, shunning suitors. Reversed radiant, her celestial espousal sanctified valoir, vows sundered by siege. Charles Angulite amid Agincourt's gore, crowned sans bastard shadow. Noble nuptials, Burgundy betrayed for dowries, dissolved in her chaste clarity. Intimacy's inquisition inverted. Earthly troths trod under war's boot, heaven's troth, triumphing, eternal. Rehabilitation rhetoric rang the twist. When maids wed the divine, monarchs inherit the incorruptible. Bureaucracy betrayed its blood. Vaulted appeals, Eugene IV's schism-shadowed scrolls. Resurfaced, 1431 pleas, piercing, 1456, parchment. Quills kin to Rouen's quivered over indictments. Couch and simoniac, Philip extortion's engine. Wax seals cracked like conscience. Ledgers labeled liars. Apparatus, anvil of ages. Anvil turned on anvil makers' dockets. Dread dissolved, to devotion's diary. Economy echoed empire's end. Lancastrian intestines trickled, Thamesward, Normandy nullified. Loire minted made medallions, Orleans orchards reclaimed. Burgundian looms languished, boycotted. Philip's purse, pie-pinched, flame-fueled fraud, fermented fiscal flip. Saints sovereignized soil, heretics hemorrhage, homage. Gold's gospel gleamed, grace gathers greater grist than greed. Religion recoiled, radiant from revelation's roar. Calixtus III's contrite bull birthed beatifications. Bud 1920 canon full-fruited, yet 1456 seeded. Paris prelates, 70 damned turned dove defenders. Schisms, spectres of Avignon, antipopes, shamed by her unmighted mediation. Sacraments surged retroactive. Rouen refused, viaticum vindicated, Anabaptism blessed. Altars ached with inversion Dominicans decrying their Dominican decree. Fear flipped to fervor's forge. Tower guards, once glowering, genuflected to pilgrims tracing chain grooves. Couchan's corpse unshriven, shunned like sorcery. His heirs haunted by heresy hunt. Burgundian barons blanched at peasant Sam's Purcell levy, lashing lords lashless. Dread's departments dismantled, devotion docketed daily. Spectacle sanctified the scaffold's scar. May 30th morphed martyr feast. Lilies laureled over faggots, processions parading her effigy in Orleans operas orchestrated Orleans Odyssey crowds, clutching crosses, not curses. English extravaganzas eclipsed. Henry VI's hollow Paris pageant paled to Rheims' right. Charles choreographed closures actors as assessors abjuring abominations, throngs thundering triumph. Slavery shattered in Seer's silhouette. Domremy drudges, faggot-fated kin, furrowed freer fields pragery. Peasants, psalm singing her over plough lords. Scribes, sin sanitized, tower tenders, temple keepers, feudal fog lifted by her flame mirror. God girds grime against guilt, unseen uprising under unburnt emblem. Pillars pulsed prophetic pattern. Law litigates its lineage justice, judging its judges. Marriage mocks mortal matches heavens, hitch outshining hearths, havoc. Bureaucracy buries blunders in bettered books. Economy enshrines errors as emblems. Religion recoils, then revels in raw revelation. Fear ferments faith from fangs. Spectacle scaffolds suffering to sanctuary. Slavery seeds, sovereignty in shadows. Jones, Rouen, recurs relentless. Regimes reckon with their radiance. Beneath the Seine's sullen flow, where Joan's unburnt heart sank like a sacrament spurned, civilizations whispered their secret frailty. Fear's final fracture appeared not in flames raw, but rehabilitation's reluctant dawn. 1456's court summoning couchins, shade through scribes who once served him. Loiseler, false confessor, confessed under Crozier Cross. Terror turned my tongue to treason. Witnesses wept, chains, fever, forgeries, frost. Verdict voided Rouen right as calumny's cradle. Yet the twist tormented. Law, late lamenting, proved no panacea, merely mirror to its own mutilation. France exhumed injustice, only to reinter it in legend's loam. Marriage's marred mystery magnified in mercy's light. Probes of purity shun suitors for spirits. Transmuted to triumph, celestial spouse scorning siege. Sundered troths, vow our vows, vitalized by her virgin vigil. Charles VII, Anjou anchored amid Agincourt ash, crowned kin cleansed of doubt. Burgundy betrayed beds, bartered for dowries, dissolved in divine dowry. Intimacy inverted eternal, flesh fractures under feud, faith forges the flawless. Rehabilitation's rhetoric resounded, unwed wielders outlast wedded weakness. Bureaucracy buckled beneath its own bulk. Schism sealed appeals Eugene's, entombed entreaties erupted 1456. Quills kin quivering over progenitor perjury. Wax wept on warrants. Ledgers libeled lords. Apparatus, age's anvil, anviled its architect's stocats, dread dissolved to devotion's decree. Couchins, clerks, contrite, copied contrition. Simony's script, self-struck. Economy echoed empire's elegy. Lancastrian levies lost to Leoires. Largesse Purcell pure, coin, conquering conquests, dross. Burgundian boycotts bled Philip's patrimony. Orleans orchards outgrew occupation. Flame fraud fermented fortunes flip. Saints summon sovereignty. Heretics harvest hollow husks. Gold gospel gleamed grim. Grace grinds greater than grasping. Religion recoiled, then raptured in revelation's blaze. Calixtus contrite, bull birthing, beat attitude, 1920, canon crowning, 1456's, contrition. Paris prelates pivoted, voices vexing no vice, but virtue veiled. Sissam's spectres, shamed D'Auvignon antipopes, aching under her unmitred majesty. Sacraments sanctified, retro. Rouange refused, rite restored. Banners baptism blessed. Faith fractured, then fused. Prophets purged the profane pyre. Fear fermented to faith's forge. Towers terror tenders turned temple guides. Couchins curse clung corpse. Burgundian barons blanched at ballad-born, Lever's lashless lash of legend. Dread's departments devolved to devotion's dawn. Spectacle scaffolded to sanctuary's spire. May's martyr morn morphed maypole of maiden's lily, lauding faggots' fall. Orleans odes orchestrated odysseys, oath. English epics eclipsed eternally. Charles's closures choreographed catharsises abjured in actors' agony. Throngs thundering theosis. Slavery's shadow shattered in seer's sheen. Faggot fated, furrowed freer. Scribes sin-shed unseen uprising, unburnt. God girds the grimy, guilt ground to grit. Civilizations crave their crux kindling, crosses they cannot carry. Pillars pulse the prophecy. Rouang's Rouang recurs relentless, a requiem in every regime's reckoning. Law litigates lineage, devouring its daughters to digest doubt justice Janus, judging its own jugular. Marriage mocks its mortal mesh, heaven's hitch hallowing hearth's havoc, purity prevailing over pact's peril. Bureaucracy buries blunders in bettered tomes, apparatus authoring its own atonement. Economy enshrines error as emblem, saints sovereign over sinners' spoil. Religion recoils from raw radiance, recoiling till revelation rends the robe direct, divine devouring detritus, schism shamed by seer's simplicity. Fear flips fangs to fervor, dread docketed as devotion's diary guards, genuflect where they glowered. Lords lurk in legacy's lash. Spectacle scaffolds, suffering to sanctum. Scaffolds becoming steeples crowds, cheer crux over cruelty, pyre previewing paradise. Slavery seeds, sovereignty in shadows, unseen uprising under unburnt heart wretches, wielding her witness as weapon. Systems marble masked mask their mortality. Power immolates illuminators, birthing blaze brighter than branded bone. Joan of Arc was not a maiden. She was a mirror held to heaven's fire, scorching earth's empire. In her ash, all ages see their scaffold, kindled by kings, consumed by crozier, consecrated by crowd. The pyre whispers, eternal. Civilizations caught the cross they crave to crucify, mistaking God's gleam for goblin glow. Rouang smoked. The world still sleeps. When prophets pierce the pillars, flames follow but fire forges forever. The fracture festers, what throne endures its own echo?